To welcome back to the advisor, everyone. If you have not yet done so, please like and subscribe so we can continue to provide you with amazing guests like who I'm about to introduce you to. Dr. Yvette Rose is here. She has a podcast on her channel. If you haven't yet, go back and listen to episode 1. This is episode 2, where we're going to dive into the topic of grief. So, Dr. Yvette Rose is a holistic counselor and internationally celebrated trauma recovery expert. She's a best-selling author of Metaphysical Anatomy and more than 20 other books that map the hidden emotional roots of 722 physical conditions, turning complicated mind-body science into practical self-healing roadmaps. So she transformed her own painful path and developed breakthrough methods such as the metaphysical anatomy technique and meta psychology coaching. She's guided thousands of clients one on one, led seminars in 43 countries, teaching people how to decode their body's messages, release inherited and lifetime trauma, and reclaim a life driven by purpose rather than the pain. So get ready to dive in and meet this beautiful, beautiful woman. How are you doing?
Lisa, I am thrilled to be here with you today. And thank you so much for that incredible red carpet introduction. I love it.
You deserve it. Look at you're like an angel. You're like a queen sitting there. All the work that you've done.
I'm trying. I
No,
think
but
we're
it's
all
coming
trying.
from within. It's coming from within.
God
Like I can
bless.
see it in
Thank you.
the way you hold yourself in your body. I can tell that you've really done the inner work and it really shows in your skin, the way you're glowing. So I'm pumped to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. I feel so good now.
You're making me dance now.
Exactly. Yeah, today is going to be an interesting day. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, grief. I mean, it's not a fun topic, but it's a real topic. And I
Yeah.
think people need to talk about it more because a lot of people are grieving right now, and the grief process is so complex.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know what makes it even more interesting is that every time when we hear the word grief or bereavement, we think it's because of loss. We think it's because a loved one passed away, or maybe someone that we knew, maybe not that close, but it can still rattle us. Grief can also be related to losing a job. It can be related to a friendship that's no longer there. It can be related to moving from one city to another and suddenly everything is new and grieving the life that we had. Grief is not just tied to loss of a person, it can be to a lifestyle, a community, right? Anything where we had such a beautiful, perhaps, connection. And sometimes the connection might not even have been that great. So, why is it that we can still grieve? Why is it that people can even grieve someone that abused them in their life? This is the hardest grief to talk about, right? How do you grieve a parent, for example, that was absolutely horrendous to you your entire life, and then suddenly they're gone, and then you see people having the biggest breakdowns? You would think, well, what is there to miss? You miss being violently treated, you miss the hostility. What is it that you miss? So I actually want to touch on that as well today, because this is something that, and I talked about this just the other day to my students, and I called it the how how do you grieve an abuser? Because this is something that a lot of people just, they get stuck in a state of silence because they don't know how to answer that. They almost feel shameful that this person that they've talked about in therapy for so long, that was so horrible to them, is suddenly not there. And now suddenly they're grieving them, which makes them feel that their behavior is contradicting what they've said in the past. I can
Yeah.
relate to that. And I'm saying that quite boldly because I've been there. I've been there, and I'm absolutely going to touch on that as well to help people to understand why you feel the way that you do, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly normal, in fact. So, what's really
I
important,
want to interrupt you for a sec because
please do.
literally, Dr. Rose, I was on a call with this woman who was in this narcissistic, abusive marriage, and she was
Yeah.
telling me that she like was grieving it. and he couldn't have treated her more poorly. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how the heck are you grieving this person that tortured you? And like, I'm like, it's so, I'm so excited to dive in further.
Oh, I love that you said that. Thank you for confirming exactly what I've been saying, because this is exactly what I'm referring to. And it's hard for people hearing that because it's like, what is wrong with you? Right. So that's kind of
Yeah,
like the initial thing that we're thinking, because if any normal person who's not really, their nervous system is not really wired to handle and to tolerate, to regulate abuse,
yeah,
they would be like, that's toxic. And we're like, no, that's my world. That's my ecosystem. That is what my nervous system is used to. Like, what do you mean it's not normal?
yeah.
Cognitively, we can understand that, right? We can decode that cognitively, but the nervous system speaks a completely different language. So I do want to touch on why is it that the brain struggles to process loss and how grief impacts our emotional regulation, and why community support, even if you don't know that person, is incredibly, it's not important, it's a necessity. It's an absolute necessity. And when we look how grief, one thing that I learned in my own journey, grief almost practically defies neuroscience, right? I want to start with this because when we look at how science is slowly picking up, we think that we're constantly looking at neuroscience for the answers, but here, neuroscience doesn't actually have the answer. Because for so many years, emotions were almost treated like these quick, bursts of emotions, right? Oh, you feel fear? Oh, that's the amygdala, right? You feel joy? Oh, great, that's dopamine, right? These short, sharp bursts on a brain scan. Now, the thing is, grief is not just a memory. It's actually held in context, in objects, in sensory loops. And that is also why our, how can I call it, traditional neuroscience, actually, they they can't pin it down accurately because of this, because grief lives in the nervous system and it lives in the world around us, which is called patterning in psychology. Because grief doesn't follow, for example, like a specific script the way that it would when we have pain. Oh, where's the pain from? Oh, you bumped your toe. Okay, great. That's the classical pain modulation, concept. But what if you didn't bump your toe? What if you didn't do anything? Why is the pain there? This is where neuroscience and this is where research often fail people, right? So we want to find what is that gray area? What is it that's really truly making this so incredibly painful? Because a person's grief is shaped by their culture. It's shaped by rituals that they have during the day, by language, by memory, and by support systems. And research normally doesn't necessarily dive into these aspects as well. It's not always considered. So what we end up with, like I said earlier, are these snapshots, these bursts, but not the full story. And what I've learned in my work with my clients and through working on myself as well, that grief isn't a single event. And as I touched earlier on, it's like an ecosystem. But in this case, it's an ecosystem collapse because the person that you lost, the routine that's gone, the house that you used to have, the friendship that used to be there, it wasn't necessarily just something that you loved or that you appreciated or that you found comfort in. They or that thing, object, was actually part of your nervous system's map of safety. The sight of it, a person's voice, um, doing a certain behavioral pattern. Maybe you go for a walk every day and suddenly you live in the city and you feel unsafe and you don't go for that walk anymore.
Right.
All of that calmed your nervous system in one way or another.
I've even
You see,
grieved an
so
object before. I've even grieved an
yeah,
object, like something like
yes,
simple, like a glass that I used every day. It broke, and I was like, oh my God, this is tearing my heart apart, you know?
I know. And I love what you said there, because now people listening will think, wait, what? A glass? Yes, a glass. that can be something incredibly powerful for someone else because of how it regulated your nervous system, the meaning that we attach to things, especially when we're going through periods of stress, when we're going through periods of lack of support. What do we do if we don't have lack of support? We start to connect to things around us that makes us feel safe, that gives us comfort without us actually realizing it, right? Because I mean, look at people and certain objects, our habits or that person's habits and routines and patterns that we had with them anchors you in your daily rhythm, right?
Yeah.
And when that's gone, the body goes into a state of confusion. Now it has to relearn, how do I find that place of comfort in the absence of this person or this object that was always there? So what you're feeling is the shock of that transition that your nervous system have to go through, and that shock translates into grief. It translates into looking for this attachment that's now detached, and the cognitive distress that happens because that shock can be so strong that it actually has showed on scans that the brain waves that people go into when they go through grief is exactly the same as the brain wave as you would go into if you had to knock your toe, right? You don't think of
Right.
anything else. You're in that moment. You're right there, right? That pain commands immediate presence. Grief does exactly the same. That is why
Wow.
you feel confused, because you cannot connect to your environment. You don't think of your future goals. Nothing is appealing. You're so pulled into the pain and the distress in that moment. And now the nervous system has to relearn everything. And we all know that the nervous system doesn't always necessarily shift like that, especially if we don't have the tools to support the nervous system to regulate itself. So we have to learn to it's almost like re-educate the body, because the problem is now your brain keeps expecting that hug from that person that's not going to come. Your brain is expecting that object that was always there that you wanted to pick up, right? So you see, and it's not being fulfilled. So it's firing stress signals that feels like panic, because that expectation doesn't just come with an expectation. It comes with an actual action that it's waiting to be met. Right. So whether it's an emotional connection, whether you want to just pick up that glass, like what you said, there's an actual memory stored throughout the whole body, including your muscles, because when you pick up that glass, it's anchored. It's right there. Right. So every time when your brain thinks of firing off, of picking that glass in your arm movement and everything, that triggers that stress. Right.
Right.
So it's a lot that needs to be relearned, and also to relearning and teaching ourselves again, right? So it's like a part of our identity that dissolves. And the problem is why the brain can also struggle to adapt to that grief is because when people start to move through these changes, let's be honest, Lisa, a lot of us don't like change. We don't like change.
Yeah.
We like our place of comfort. But here's the thing. This is why achieving success can be so hard. This is why getting out of relationships can also be so hard. This is now an additional point, right? So this is kind of like leaning on the grief as well. We have very negative associations with change, with the very thing that we need to embrace in order to heal, become successful, and to create the life that we want. If you have an unhealthy relationship with change, let me tell you right now, guaranteed, whatever you try to do is going to feel painful. And that pain is coming from resistance. It's coming from fear. We're working against fear. So what are we doing? We are wiring our mind that every time when I try to do something, it feels uncomfortable. It triggers fear. It triggers panic because my nervous system doesn't recognize that I don't like this. Now we sabotage, and we don't realize that we're actually sabotaging it. Right. So
Right.
then people go and they think, oh, what do I need to do? What is my self-sabotaging tendencies? I don't want to hear what your self-sabotage is. I want to hear why you're scared of change. Right. So
Right.
I want to get
Yeah.
into the root of this. I don't want to play around in the symptom land. That's not going to get you to where you want to be. But it feels comfortable, right? So, and it makes a lot of people feel, well, at least I'm doing something. Yes, you're doing something, but you're taking the long road. Right.
Right.
So, and the point is to come back to what I was talking about when we look at sadness, when we look at grief, we feel it in the heart. We really deeply feel it in the heart.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'm going to touch on that now because when we are sad, we normally feel it right here. A lot of people feel sadness in their back, they feel it in their stomach, but normally we feel that wave at least in the heart. Now, I experienced grief and loss to the point where I ended up having what's called broken heart syndrome just before I turned 30. And that for everyone else, that's a stress-induced heart attack. And I was living my best life, Lisa. My business was wildly successful. I was doing incredibly well. I had the house of my dreams. My bank account was great. And back then, I mean, I'm in my 40s now. So back then, when you look at that age, be almost on the brink of being a millionaire, it's unheard of. I mean, that's when people will
Right.
still like, what's a nomad? Like, what's a nomad? Like, what? Right. So I was already living that life for 10 years before the concept of being a nomad came out. I was
Yeah.
even stopped in my country because I wanted to leave the country. And they looked at my passport and they said, sorry, but you don't have a return ticket. And I'm like, why do I need one? Well, you can't leave your country without a return ticket. And I said, well, I don't know when I'm coming back. Why is that a problem? You know,
Right.
I don't want to, know when I'm going to come back. And it took them 2 hours to process the fact with their management before they would let me go that it's actually legal. It's okay. Like I can leave my country and not know when I'm going to come back. That's how foreign it still was, right? I'm talking about back then. So I still laugh. And now when we look at this grief that I'm not referring to, I was teaching people how to understand emotions in their body. I was helping people to overcome challenges in their life. But what I didn't understand back then is almost my addiction to what's called positive stress. It's known as eustress. Now, I know research shows that if you have a positive association with stress, it's less likely to affect your health. Well, I have something else to say about that. It wasn't the case for me because it's that stress that I thought, wow, this is great. Let's go. And I was an upbeat person. I felt good. I felt great. But then on top of that, I experienced a relationship breakdown. And I used my eustress to combat this and say, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a challenge. I got this. And then I had the passing of something else happening there at the same time. So I had two double whammies at the same time. And my body and my heart said no. It just said
Right.
no.
Are you talking
And
positive stress like your work? You love your work, but it's like doing so much of it.
yeah,
Is that positive stress? Like loving
it can
something, but
be.
just overdoing it.
Exactly. So I was overdoing it because I was going through these traumatic events. I tried to lean on that eustress. I tried to lean on that and use that to push my way forward. I didn't stop to feel the grief. I didn't stop to feel the pain because we are pain avoidant. We're discomfort avoidant. I mean, we are biologically actually designed to be negative bias. We don't like negativity, right? So it's almost like I wouldn't say it's an actual instinctive response. Well, maybe it actually also can be now that I think of it, because it's a behavioral action that we just act on it without really clearly thinking it through, right? We want to avoid. It's like when you put your hand on a hot plate,
Yeah.
you of course you're
You
going to
run.
take your hand away. You're not going to touch it again, right? So it's not
Yeah.
that your brain tells you, it's not like a cognitive process where you have time to process it. It's instinctive. You don't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
So when I now realize at the core of why that sadness was in my heart, because even after the heart attack, this breathlessness, the exhaustion, and even before it, the pain in my chest was incredible. It literally felt like there was a knife in my heart. And when I would move, it would hurt even more. And when
Ouch.
I realized, yeah, it really was, it was that strong. It was that strong. I was doing my breath work, I was doing exercises, tapping, I did all of it, and it wouldn't shift. And that was before even all of these things went wrong in my life. And you know what? That's the power of our thoughts as well. It's already the understanding of what used to regulate me, what used to give me comfort is not going to be there soon. So we are already there, right? Just a thought in your imagination creates a biological response and resonance already in your body. I mean, you're creating an alternate reality that doesn't exist yet, but your body is having a full-blown biological response to it. So my body was already being wired and layered with all these expectations. And it's like this pressure pot was just building and building and building. And when these two events finally came to a halt, which all happened in the same year, I mean, practically 2 months apart, the pressure part burst. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. And a big part of that also is that why we feel it in the chest is because of our autonomic nervous system, the ANS. And this is normally a part of the body that regulates involuntary body functions, right? This is like our heartbeat, like breathing, like digestion. So when your stomach starts to feel upset because you're nervous or because you're stressed, that's the ANS. And it also has two different branches. We have the sympathetic nervous system, and that triggers the fight or flight response, right? So when we are in that, the heart rate's going up, we're feeling upset, that's when we are in the SNS state. But then also we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's kind of the one where we want to be in. That's the rest and digest. That helps us to recover, that helps us to relax, it slows down the heart rate. But when we experience sadness, our body actually reacts very similarly to stress. And study shows that sadness activates the sympathetic nervous system. And this is leading to all these psychological changes, like the constriction of blood vessels, right? Creating that tightness in the chest, because that's really what's happening. That increased heart rate, the fluctuations in blood pressure, it decreases also our heart rate variability, which is linked to emotional distress. So when we look at all these responses coming all together at the same time, this is what also makes sadness feel as if though it's almost like physically centered in the heart as well. Right? And sadness, it triggers these changes in brain chemistry as well. It's affecting the way that our body responds, because cortisol is also released, right? And prolonged sadness increases our cortisol levels. And this is why we have this feeling of heaviness and fatigue. It's like the energy is just not there. And what I noticed along with that in my specific case, I don't know about other people, is that my grief triggered the freeze response. And so when I felt this heaviness and the freeze response as well, that freeze form collapse, right? I literally felt stuck in my life. No amount of, pep talking and, whatever, hype I try to use to get myself out of that. It's like it was such a physiological response.
So you had a heart attack, like an actual heart attack?
Yeah, stress related. I was in the hospital.
Wow.
And you know what the doctor came to tell me? And this was in the third world country when this happened. And I was discharged that same day. And thank God my mom was there visiting me. And I'll tell you in a minute why they did that. And my mom was there visiting. So she was, there to help me to get back on track, because the weakness that you feel, the breathlessness that you feel, it's all your energy goes into just breathing and just fighting negative thoughts of thinking this is going to happen again. Right.
Yeah.
And so he came into it was. And he came into the room, my doctor, and this was his briefing. And he threw this white box of pills on my bed. And he said, "You don't have a goddamn heart problem. You have a damn stress problem." And then he walked out.
Oh, wow.
And he prescribed me with Valium. So that was my prescription to deal with my grief and my stress. Wow. He didn't understand, nor did he know why I had that, right? So Valium was my prescription. Yeah. And so another point, I just quickly want to touch on why grief is also, why it feels so incredibly hard. It's because of the absence of oxytocin, right? The lack of oxytocin, which is released through social bonding. And this can intensify loneliness, and it can exacerbate heartache, right? So this is why I cannot stress enough, when people are grieving, when you are in a state of distress, it's actually even more so important to get out and just go for a walk in the park where you see people. Go to the mall where there are people. I don't care if you know these people or not. That social interaction, that nonverbal social interaction, is actually going to help you to regulate your nervous system, because it releases oxytocin. It releases oxytocin. And I have to say, I myself experienced this to be true. Because I'm a, believe it or not, professionally, I am an extrovert. Like, I'm out there. But when I'm not teaching, when I'm not on camera, when I'm not doing something that involves my role, I'm actually an introvert. I
Mm,
really enjoy, like, that's when I switch to the opposite. So for me,
right.
I feel like I'm living this dual life, which is actually quite comfortable. But then my husband doesn't always understand when he's like, "Hey, let's go out." And I'm like, "Yeah, I need some cave time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm actually enjoying my cave right now. And let's go talk to friends." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really want to do that right now." So, but when I do go
Yeah.
out, it actually ends up being nice because I find that co-regulation. Even though I
Right.
didn't want to go, even though I don't have anything in common with a lot of people, I still go because you can still have really beautiful conversations. So,
Hmm.
this has been my learning curve and my experience with grief. So, my first point of advice that I can give people who are going through grief is breathe. Have you ever noticed that when you're grieving, when you're stressed, you hold your breath? You hold your breath. It's not just when you're stressed, but when
Totally.
you're grieving, right? It's like it's these little bursts of breath. That's not good because breath also regulates the vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve is regulated, it helps to regulate all your organs as well. And that includes the heart. It's connected to the heart as well. So deep, long breaths every now and then is important. I even tell people put timers on your phone. If you're struggling, if you're grieving and it's so incredibly intense, just for that, for a few days, put a timer on your phone that can go off every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes that just says breathe. Just breathe. You don't need these special watches or investing in anything extravagant. Use your phone. And you know what? I have done that. I have done that during my moments of grief as just as that little something that can help you to remind you to breathe. Shoulders back, head up, just breathe. Because when we grieve, what I noticed is a lot of people go into a panic attack. They go into what's called a state, almost like fake hypoxia. Because we don't breathe well, we feel like the brain goes into a state of distress. And so it's like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So it actually induces a panic attack because what happens when we have a panic attack? We now really focus on trying to breathe. We try to focus on breathing or we start to hyperventilate. Have you noticed that? That's like when you're taking really deep breaths. It's like you feel like I can't take
Totally.
a breath often this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can start to avoid that. But when you do find yourself in a moment like that, and for anyone listening right now, I want you to just sit up, put your shoulders back, and look up
I'll
at
do
the
it
roof,
too.
open your mouth. Yeah. And breathe. Just look up and just, and as you do that, open your mouth. There's a
Mm.
breathe. Nice. You have to open your mouth and you have to breathe through your mouth. Just notice that.
Mm.
Feel that flow of air. It's impossible not to be able to breathe. I
Yeah,
can
it's like
tell you,
so like
it's
the
soothing.
stream. Yeah, it felt beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that all the time
beautiful.
now. I've never
I
done
love
that.
that. Yes. And so
Mm.
this is what I normally tell people, please do that when you are stuck in a state of distress. When you feel that you can't breathe, yes, you can. Shoulders back, look up, mouth open, breathe. Breathe, because when you do that, you will immediately, within a few minutes, regulate. You will regulate. That panic, we all know that jerking when we cry or when we go into that panic attack or when you're shaking, that's going to regulate your nervous system. And you know what? Congratulations when you do regulate because you just prevented the body from locking in that trauma. Because if you try to avoid it, if you suppress it, you lock it in. You just added a few extra years of healing work and processing work to your journey, right? So regulate it now, be done with it, help the body to heal, help the body to process that. And another one that really helped me was to stand up and jump. Stand up and
Mm.
jump. Break through that freeze response, break through that fawn response. And sometimes we feel like we want to run away from our circumstances, but we cannot. So all this cortisol just gets locked into the body. And we live such a high-paced life that people are like, well, I can't even go for a walk. Okay, great. No problem. Then you go into the toilet at your office and you jump. You jump until you're
Mhm.
absolutely exhausted. Then you sit on that floor, you put your shoulders back, you look up, you catch your breath after you were jumping, and you're going to feel like a brand new person. And you might have a release, have it. have it. And you're going to feel like you just turned a new chapter. I can't emphasize the power of what I just said. Sometimes we think that these changes and shifts and the magnitude of it has to be through suffering and pain and throwing ourselves in ice cold plunges and God, I don't know what else. Sometimes it can actually be incredibly straightforward and simple, and you can do it all by yourself without needing someone to help you or without needing to wait for a special moment. And yes, I've had moments of panic when I'm walking in the mall. I'm like, where's the restroom? I go to the toilet. I go into my little cubicle and I jump, I release, and I let go. And that's it. That's it. And one last word of advice for anyone who's like, well, I don't have access to a bathroom right now or a private space. Here's one more trick that I absolutely love. I take a deep breath slowly through my mouth, and I've done this in meetings, just and hold. Hold your breath as long as you can without passing out. If you feel like passing out, then that's a good moment to exhale, but exhale out your nose. And calmness will come in and your center will come back. That's a beautiful way of just, I can regulate right now, but I can hold space without suppressing all of this. And then as you exhale, imagine just all that stress, all that anxiety. Visualization works incredibly well. The body responds actually to our visualization. Just as your body, the physical aspects, the biochemical responses can react to your imagination, the body can also respond to imagination being used in a positive way, right? We know that. And that includes for healing. So you imagine that stress just draining out of you, almost like a river that's just flowing through you, out your feet. And I promise you, you are going to feel a difference, guaranteed. I've trained and worked with, I've trained thousands of practitioners. I've worked with over 7,000 clients one-on-one. Let me tell you, this works. It absolutely works. So Lisa, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. It's funny because I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking that healing or working on our bodies or doing things has to be challenging. I know when I first,
Yeah.
started exercising, I'm like, oh, I got to go hard. I got to do like push really hard and lift like the heaviest weights. The body is so simple. It literally just wants gentle movement and gentle
Yeah.
touching and like we don't have to make it so complicated. So I love how you just so made it so simple and beautifully laid out that literally we just have to breathe and we'll get through it. So thank you so much. Oh my God.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for the opportunity to share that as well.
Yeah, where can people find you for more information?
That's a great question. So I'm almost everywhere. So if you do forget to the URL or what I'm about to say, just Google Yvette Rose and you'll find me. I always joke and say Google is my business card. Or you can just go to metaphysicalanatomy.com. You can catch me, Dr. Yvette Rose Official on Instagram. And these are the two main places. Oh, don't forget my YouTube channel, YvetteVideos.com. So it's an easy URL to remember. So I have tons of videos there with free, jam-packed, full of information to help you to live your best life. And something also that people absolutely love is a free guided healing session. So whether you're grieving, whether you're going through loss, whether you're going through a stressful or traumatic event, this is a fantastic free resource that you can use. And it's a pre-recorded video that's half an hour long where I talk you through processes. I ask you questions. We go deep into breath work, bilateral processing, and my metaphysical anatomy technique is weaved in between in that as well. And it's very, very powerful. So you can already start supporting yourself absolutely for free at guidedhealingsession.com. So you can already start your journey right there and dive in.
Beautiful. Do you have any last minute things that you would like to leave the audience with on this topic?
This is a great question, Lisa. So there's so many things I have to pick from all these bullet points. So one thing that for me was the most important was I realized the power of giving my power away, but not in a bad way. But I identified way too much with people and with objects. to the point where my nervous system was reliant on them to regulate me.
Right.
People in your environment will always change. It will always fluctuate and change. So expect your nervous system to always fluctuate and change. And that is what I realized for myself is that I'm not as in control of my emotional well-being as what I thought I was. And I'm thinking for myself, wow, well that feels a little bit unsafe. And when that reality hit me, Lisa, I made it my absolute mission to become my own source of regulation. People, circumstances, places complemented me and it complemented my nervous system. But good God, after that near death experience, I called my power back and I called it back hard. So, and I'm still working on, I'm not saying I'm enlightened, on the top of the mountain, but what I can tell you is that I feel that I'm in a good place in my life. I feel content. And for me, that is the ultimate goal personally for myself. So working on ourselves, it's a daily journey, it's daily steps that we take. I sometimes daily pep talk myself, into a better state. If I feel a little bit down or I feel a little bit knocked over, I'm like, no, we're not going to do that now, right? So it's really right. So I've become my own little therapist in a way, and then I love that there's a part of me that can challenge myself because I know myself really well. So I'm like, we're going to kick that up the butt, Yvette. Come on, let's do this. Right. So I think if people sometimes have to hear the dialogue that goes on in my head, they'll think that I'm talking to but I think it's also beautiful to have that relationship with yourself, right? Where you can give yourself positive criticism and give yourself constructive feedback and challenge yourself and not just always be the, oh, poor me. Because let me tell you, Lisa, I've had days where I had pity parties and no one was invited. I would feel sorry for myself and I would sulk and it will just pull you into this bad place. And then with days where I had to tell myself, okay, this party is over now. We need to bring this to an end and let's wrap it up. Let's go. Life goes on. We need to go on. Right. So, and that's the hardest step because we get comfortable in that place because when we are stuck in that freeze response, the body releases endorphins to help us to feel comfortable in that moment of distress. Why we want to give up that place of endorphins and freeze and when it feels so nice that I don't want to go out there again. Right. So this you can see how a safety freeze response can actually help you to regulate your nervous system, how we can start to associate safety with that. And that's why it can feel so much harder to get out of that. Isn't that wild? It's incredible, the complexity of the body and how it wires itself. And the more we can start to understand that the body is not working against you, it's working for you. You have to understand it's your body's sole purpose to keep you alive. It has no benefit in becoming ill and making you feel that a bus just drove over you. When the body goes into a state of distress, whether it's an ailment, whether it's grief, it's just showing you where it needs to be strengthened. That's all that it's showing you. And the attitude that we go into that challenge is going to make or break the outcome that you're going to have. If you're going to go into that with the mindset thinking, oh God, what's wrong with you now? Well, God, look at the platform that you just laid out for your body to heal on. Whereas if you can go into it thinking, okay, I don't feel well right now. This is really uncomfortable. But let's see, how can we address this? How can we correct this? Where and how can I bring balance back into this? Now you're in a solution-oriented mindset. You are much more likely to align yourself with people and circumstances that can help you. Because when you're in a place of pain, that's all that you see. You can't see the solutions that's hanging right in front of you. You're filtering that completely out. But when you are in a solution-oriented mindset, now we can start to filter in all the solutions because we are looking for it. We're looking for it, right? So that distinct difference in mindset is going to make or break your healing journey. So I do hope that helps. So that was it was a long answer, Lisa. I'm sorry, but I thought that was important.
That is so important. Thank you so much again for being here and for talking about all of these important things.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for having me. It was lovely to talk to you.
You too. I can't wait for you to come back and do the series with us and talk about more amazing things. And to
I'm
the
ready.
audience, if you learned anything today, make change your friend. And don't forget to breathe. Until next time, take care, everyone.